Can someone who can see have a guide dog? Well, let's talk about that. Hi, I'm Morgan. I am an International Association of Animal Behavior Consultants accredited dog trainer, and in my work I focus primarily on service dogs. Today we are joined by my own personal service dog in training, Dizzy, and we're going to clarify some points about mobility dog training and guide dog training. How are they the same? How are they different? Can you have a guide dog if you can still see? Well, hopefully we can find some nuance on those topics today. First want to clarify about the type of task that we are not talking about today, and that is forward momentum pull. Forward momentum pull can often be confused with guiding tasks, but it is fairly distinct. Guiding tasks or leading tasks are used to help somebody orient to their environment, whereas forward momentum pull is used primarily in order to regulate a handler's gait, their balance, and reduce their fatigue overall. Forward momentum pull can have overlap with some of the more leading tasks. So what's the difference between forward momentum pull and a leading task? Forward momentum pull tends to be very human driven, as in I give the dog instructions as to where we are going, I'm pretty aware of my surroundings, and I am telling the dog exactly where to go. It's more a positional cue than it is the dog driving movement. However, leading tasks tend to be more dog driven. The dog may be finding specific things. For instance, many dogs are trained to find exits, they're trained to find specific people, they can be trained to find chairs, and various things of that nature. These dogs may even indicate curbs, they may let their handler know when they're coming up to stairs, and they could tell their handler about hazards in the environment and navigate with plenty of space around different kinds of obstacles. These are tasks that even a sighted person could very much benefit from. Sometimes people get dizzy and can no longer orient in their environment. Sometimes people dissociate as a result of psychiatric conditions and need help finding their way. Sometimes people have some vision loss but can still see all right and just need a little help avoiding obstacles in their environment. This type of leading task training is extremely beneficial, but does it make a dog a guide dog? Well, I would argue no. Guide dogs are a very specific kind of service dog, meant exclusively to help blind people with navigating their environment. Guide dog training is extremely specialized and relies on the handler not being able to give the dog certain cues about the environment. When I get very dizzy, I might need help orienting, but I can still see everything going around me and give my dog minute cues. Guide dog training is highly specialized. Certified guide dog mobility instructors take hours-long tests and do hundreds of hours of training in order to be able to train guide dogs for blind people. And that's where I think this distinction is very important. Many dog trainers who work with service dogs, myself included, can teach a dog to do a leading task. And this is really beneficial for the handlers that we serve. However, guide is a different animal. I think it is a bit disingenuous when trainers such as myself, who are not certified to work with guide dogs, tell people that they train guide. Because, to tell you the truth, we don't. Not unless we've gone through those hundreds of hours of extensive training. This is important because of the safety of people involved. We really want to be sure that people are getting the right kind of help for the right kind of disability mitigating needs. It also causes confusion within the service dog owner-trainer community. These leading tasks are clearly extremely valuable to people's lives, but they don't make a dog a guide dog. And the community of owner-trained service dogs and the people who serve them has not yet come up with a term that truly encapsulates how it is different from guide work. I see terms like sighted guide thrown around in order to describe those leading tasks that we talked about before. But sighted guide is a term borrowed from the blind community to mean a sighted person guiding a blind person. So we can't really use the term sighted guide for that. We use terms like guide task. I have even seen people call their dogs guide dogs when they perform these leading tasks. I think that these terms can get a little bit confusing and lead to us conflating guide work with these tasks for sighted people, which is why I tend to use the term leading task or even finding task to describe these tasks where a dog helps a sighted person to orient to their environment. This way we are respecting the difference between guide dogs and dogs who do leading tasks, because they are very different kinds of work. So, can a sighted person have a guide dog? Well, no, because guide dogs are very specifically trained for the needs of blind people. But a sighted person can use leading tasks in order to help them navigate their environment safely. However, the system at hand is really not without substantial flaws. For instance, it can leave people feeling rather underserved. Let's imagine for a second that you are completely night blind. At night, you cannot navigate safely on your own without orientation and mobility training and the use of a tool like a white cane or potentially a guide dog. But during the day, you still have enough vision remaining in order to navigate pretty all right on your own. Well, it is very unlikely that that person would qualify for any guide dog organization, even though they have a disability and could really use the disability mitigating properties at night. What if you have migraines that cause you to be unable to see for certain periods, but you're able to see the rest of the time? Well, you might be able to benefit from a guide dog to orient yourself during those times where you can't see, but you're not going to qualify for a guide dog organization. The same remains true for people who have enough remaining vision to get by, but not enough to navigate completely safely on their own. Guide dog schools have very specific requirements for the kinds of vision loss that can be paired with a guide dog, and it does have to be legal blindness and not on the cusp and not only sometimes. Guide dog organizations and trainers explain that to work a guide dog, you need to be able to put a certain amount of trust in the dog and have a certain amount of orientation and mobility training. Their argument is that you cannot properly handle a guide dog if you have some remaining vision, because you will be giving the dog cues about the environment and preventing them from doing the full extent of their work. They would also say for that part-time type of guide that it would not be enough to keep the dog skills fresh. But I do know that some people with disabilities feel very left behind by the current system. This leads some people to train their own true guide tasks. And this is a hairy area. Some people would say that those owner-trained guides are not true guide dogs because they're not trained by an organization and they may not have the same exact training as the guide dogs that are. Whereas some people who are proponents for those owner-trained dogs certainly believe that their dogs are doing true guide work during the time that they need to be. I think it is important that we highlight that nuance. It is possible that sometimes someone who can see sometimes might have something that we would refer to as a guide dog, depending on your opinions on the nuance of the service dog community. I'd also like to highlight that some blind people can't use guide dogs from organizations. If you are blind but have a disability besides blindness, for instance, a mobility disability, a psychiatric disability, seizures, sometimes a guide dog organization will not pair a guide dog with a person with those needs. If a guide dog organization does pair with someone with those additional disability mitigating needs, the guide dog will likely not be trained in order to mitigate those disabilities. Therefore, a lot of people feel underserved by the current system because they could really use a guide that has crossover training into disability mitigation in other areas, such as medical alert, potentially mobility, or psychiatric response. This might be a lot of pressure to place on one dog, which is why there are currently no organizations serving this specific need. Remember, guide dogs have an extremely high-pressure job, and they tend to do more tasking than other kinds of service dogs. Every time a guide dog and handler pair are moving, the guide dog is tasking. This shouldn't be true of other kinds of mobility dogs. This is why the working career of a guide dog may be somewhat shorter than other kinds of service dogs. This pressure and this high ratio of tasking is why most guide dog organizations won't dual-purpose train. There are smaller trainers who have offered dogs like this to blind people, and there are people who have owner-trained dogs for these purposes, and there are some awesome dogs doing good work out there from these circumstances. But it does leave some people feeling a little bit left out from the disability mitigation that a dog might otherwise be able to offer them. In short, can somebody who can see use a guide dog? Well, the large part of the answer is no, and the small bit of fine print is that it's a little bit complicated. But humans use dogs in harnesses for all sorts of things, from orienting to their environment to using them to assist with balance and gait. Did you like my sweater in this video? It's made by my friend Q, who's a blind crochet artist and owner and handler of a privately trained guide dog. Here's what they had to say about why this difference is so important to their community. First, guide dogs were the original service dogs. Guide dog trainers and blind handlers paved the way for service dogs to have legal protections, set societal understandings of working dogs, and still today take the hardest hit when service dog protections are challenged. For example, most guide dogs are big dogs, so some airlines say employees can turn away a team if the dog is too big. Ride-sharing apps are sometimes blind people's only mode of transportation, and on the whole, we use ride-shares more than any other demographic. Blind people tend to be the disabled people who face the most barriers to independence because everything is built for sighted people. Blind students are most likely to not have accommodations to the point of pursuing legal action, as an example. We as a community haven't been prioritized when talking about accessibility because even sighted people don't always factor in how their sight makes them biased. All that is to say, blind people have laid the foundation for a lot of the current disability supports we have, but our role and our needs are rarely on the forefront. I think acknowledging that guide dogs laid the foundation for all service dogs is a pretty simple way to acknowledge this history and this effort. Second, and maybe more important, is that guide dogs help signal to other people that the handler is blind. White canes do this too. And that helps blind people because if someone approaches us and asks if we need help, there's one less thing we have to find, especially in new places or when a blind person is out alone. Like I had someone tell me the audio indicator on the crosswalk was broken the other day. It would have been a full cycle of traffic for me to figure that out without help. When service dog handlers turn away help, and especially if they were to get annoyed when being approached while their dog is labeled as a guide dog, the person offering help might not do that the next time they see a guide dog. It shouldn't be on handlers to navigate this, but it currently is, and as a community we should be aware of how labels impact minorities in our community. Thank you to Q for consulting with me on this video, and be sure to go over to Instagram and support their crochet business this holiday season. I hope that this video was educational. If you liked what you saw here today, feel free to like and subscribe. You can also follow me on Instagram at feywild.dogs for training or feywild.pack for Dizzy's personal content. Other than that, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and remember, you are worthy of love and of kindness. I hope to hear from you soon. Bye!